Alright, we are back with a Design Doc video. Today we're taking a look at the Forgotten Depths of Kingdom Hearts. So, I haven't played any of the Kingdom Hearts. I know there's a big community behind them. People love them and stuff. I've never been, it's always been a PlayStation game, right? I've never been a PlayStation player myself, so I never really played those games. But I've heard great things. So, I don't know. We'll see what he says, and we'll go from there.
Square Enix is toiling away in their gold mine, working on their next big JRPG. It's a big project, maybe the most anticipated game in their storied history.
So I guess this video released before the lastest Kingdom Hearts again.
It'll be a milestone for their fans and likely for the future of the company. Kingdom Hearts 3. Square Enix just announced that the game will be ready sometime in the next 3 years. Now, if I just put 3 years into my custom-made Square release schedule translator, count for production values and delays, it spits out a release date of...
Never.
While we wait for Never to get here, we'll look at a rather understated and often forgotten aspect of the original Kingdom Hearts' combat, the tech point system. Kingdom Hearts is known for its reliable production schedule, sensible naming conventions, and flawless writing.
That was undeniable proof that we totally owned you, lamers.
Listen to those cheers, man. You don't get to decide if you're a hero or not. They do. And they've already made up their mind.
Shion, who else will I have ice cream with?
This is my favorite series.
I think you have issues with this. As soon as you try to make it, obviously Kingdom Hearts is a very weird theme, but as soon as you start to add weird, modern take on dialogues and stuff, it's always gonna feel weird in a video game. And for example, if you take Forspoken, a game that just released a little bit, a month ago, I think, not even. That game was. They also tried to add a bunch of I'm a cool kid from, I don't know where she's from, but the main character I think is from the real world, right? So she talks, like a teenager from the real world, and it's just so bad, and the dialogue ends up being just very weird and awkward, and yeah, it's difficult to make it correctly. I feel like in any media where they try to get this kind of it's a cool teenager type of talk, it's always difficult to do it. So it's not like a game related thing, it's just very difficult to do.
And after all of these
correctly.
years, the first game is still
natural.
hands down my personal favorite, and its combat system holds up extremely well. While the later games got more flashy and combo heavy, I prefer the slower, weighty, and more challenging combat of the first game. While
So as a PC gamer, what would bother me from this is the UI is too big. It's taking too much of the space. But I'm assuming that, yes, of course, if you're playing in a small screen, especially back then, in a small screen, right, like a meter or two in front of you, then yeah, it definitely needs bigger
Kingdom Hearts
UI.
1 was not perfect, and it could be kinda clunky at times. I felt that it had the least amount of fluff in its combat design, as most of your combat options and abilities had a clear purpose with dodge rolls, magic, guarding, special attacks, and other various skills. Kingdom Hearts 2 had a bit of a dominant strategy problem, where unless you were playing on the critical difficulty, your best option in combat more often than not turned out to be just wailing on enemies with your basic attacks. Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 are button mashers. The first game certainly has its fair share of mindlessly hacking through enemies, but there was still a bit of depth. Compared to its sequel, Kingdom Hearts 1 has a bit more emphasis on timing and defensive maneuvers, and the individual moment-to-moment gameplay felt more engaging, partially thanks to a feature I wish more single-player games would adopt: its bonus experience point system, Tech Points. Tech Points were a mechanic exclusive to Kingdom Hearts 1 that granted bonus experience points for taking special actions in combat, like hitting weaknesses, using ice on fire enemies or vice versa, parrying attacks by striking at just the right moment, guarding attacks, or deflecting projectiles back at enemies all give the player tech points. What makes this mechanic awesome is that it rewards players for exploiting your opponent. You don't
It's a little bit weird, because obviously Kingdom Hearts, it's a game made for kids, right? So in terms of difficulty, it's probably on the low side. I guess I do not talk from experience, I talk from knowing what type of game it is. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that that is the case. And in modern games, in games that we're more used to, you have to use, you're rewarded by doing those abilities, because those are the abilities that are gonna help you defeat the actual monster, right? If you're fighting a fire monster, if you do all the types of damage that are not ice damage, you're probably either gonna do very little damage or no damage at all. So you have to do them. In this case, I'm assuming that you would do damage otherwise, you will do more damage if you do the ice ability. And then it rewards you even more by giving you points. Obviously, I don't know how it's balanced, but my assumption is that if you then play properly, most likely just the game is going to end up being too easy. Obviously, like again, I don't know how it's balanced, but yeah.
only level up from taking.
What I did want to say is that, especially from back in the day, like the fact that they made basically a JRPG, but with an action combat, it's already very, very impressive, because, well, it was probably one of the first to do so at the time.
Taking enemies out. You gain EXP faster from fighting properly and basically getting good. This mechanic makes sure that the little nuances in the combat system don't get lost in the shuffle and helps make the different enemy types feel more unique. The game teaches you about the system very early on. Parrying and tech points are taught in the optional fights against the kids on Destiny Islands. When you parry against Selphie's whip, not only does it block her attack, it bounces off and hits her right on the forehead, giving you an additional 2 XP, double what you normally get by just winning the fight. Another example, when you hit Wakka with his own projectiles, it stuns him, causing him to lob his next couple shots. The fights with all of the kids become much easier and more rewarding once the player gets the hang of parrying. It's not only a great way to level up quickly at the start, but also a good survival tactic.
Obviously, I think that there is a difference between, for example, if there is the option to block, right? Which is like an easy version of the parry, in the sense that you can hold it for longer and you ensure that you actually block. But if instead you do the perfect block, which is a parry, then in that case, if the mechanics works that way, then in that case I like the fact that they reward you, because it's your typical thing of risk reward, right? You are trying to parry, which is slightly more difficult than blocking, which is more difficult than blocking. And by doing so, you not only gain an extra attack or an extra ability, in the case of, you also stun it, or you do even more damage, but you also, gain extra points, which is...
Most of the game's enemies and bosses have some attack that can either be parried, guarded, or exploited for tech points. The game also plays around with this system with special enemies like the white mushrooms that play a kind of Magic Simon Says game for tech points and other various items. The idea of a full progression system directly tied to player skill is great, and subtly different than what most other RPGs have. A lot of other games have bonus XP systems, but the systems often work in really arbitrary ways. Some implement it as a random bonus, like in Persona 3's roulette system. Sometimes it's a passive bonus like the Moon Confidant in Persona 5, or an item like the EXP share in Pokemon. Final Fantasy X hands out bonus experience for getting overkills, but a player can get around the system by using a ton of MP, or just by fighting wimpy enemies. So it doesn't really incentivize you to get a deeper understanding of your opponents. A ton of RPGs implement a vague end of battle report that grades and rewards you based on your general performance, but it does very little to actually guide you into playing better. I just destroyed these guys. What do you mean I got 3 stars? Why do I keep getting negative grade? What does finesse mean? There are some games that take a similar approach to Kingdom Hearts and using XP as an incentive for mastery and taking risks.
So the thing about the grading systems in games is that many times the formula, I guess, to give you the result is hidden. They never tell you how it works. And in many times there's like a concept of time, how long it took you to do something. And, you have that, for example, in platformer games in many times. But even in combat games like these in JRPGs, you also have these. And it's usually not necessarily, I would say it's not necessarily a very good option to put timing in turn-based games, because turn-based games, basically what they should try to do is make you think what ability should be the best one to use. And if you do not have time to think, then it defeats the purpose, right? It's not about trying to do it the faster the better. So anyways, the problem is that because it's hidden in many situations, you get grades that it doesn't really mean anything to you because you don't know why you got that grade and you didn't get another grade. So I think whenever they do that, they should make it more obvious as to what are the different factors that come into that grade for sure.
Bravely Default rewards extra experience based on how fast you win the fight. The World Ends With You has an interesting risk versus reward system that gives you more points for voluntarily taking on more fights in a row. Ys Origins gives more XP for keeping a high combo count.
So for example, that would make sense, for example, also in Pokemon, right? Because you have a system where you only heal if you go, you have to go all the way back in order to heal, etc., and to fully heal or whatever. Then, for example, giving more XP, depending on how long you've been outside in the wild, for example, in Pokemon, or how many battles you've done between going to a Pokestop. That would make sense, because that rewards the player for risking, being at risk a little bit more than just one combat, go back, one combat, go back type situation, right? So that could be something that is implemented, for example. And the combo system is usually also a common one, I would say.
Batman Arkham Asylum, even though it's not an RPG, rewards both high combo counts as well as varying your combat strategy.
Yeah.
The key aspect in these games, and in Kingdom Hearts, is that bonus XP is an active reward that directly encourages you to get better at the combat, rather than granting you experience for brute force, random luck, or just reaching some arbitrary point in the game. Though sometimes those all happen in Kingdom Hearts as well. Positive reinforcement and feedback play an important role in teaching game mechanics to players. Kingdom Hearts is a game where the mastery of its mechanics lead immediately to in-game rewards. So becoming a better player in Kingdom Hearts turns into a faster progression. This idea of tying skill to progression in a single-player experience is seen in more modern games too. The difficulty of Dark Souls is an offshoot of this idea. It turned the process of mastering combat from a recommendation.
In Dark Souls, the difference is that it's either you do those things or you're dead. So it's not that. It's not like a slow process, like you'll figure it out as you go. No, you have to figure it out like now.
To a requirement to progress at all. It's very unlikely for a player in Dark Souls to just hack their way through the game, and it's a better game for it. Kingdom Hearts' bonus XP system turned what could have been just another action RPG button masher into a game with a surprising amount of depth, and makes Kingdom Hearts a game that was just a bit ahead of its time.
But yeah, I mean, I want to make a video about this at some point, but I want to make a video to think about the distinction between JRPGs and RPGs, and the fact that we should find different words for them. Because, for example, in this case, he talks about RPGs in general. So the issue I have with it is that whenever I talk about RPGs, because I'm like an RPG fan myself, but the thing is, whenever I mention that I play RPGs and that I like RPGs, the ones that I think about and the ones that I actually do like are the Elder Scrolls series, the Fallout series, you know, Kingdom Come Deliverance, the Divinity series, Baldur's Gate, stuff like that. Okay. But whenever it's happened to me many times where people, when they talk about RPGs, they talk about JRPGs, what I call specifically JRPGs, to not make that, to have a distinction, is those like turn-based RPGs like Final Fantasy and all of these others. I don't play them, so I don't have that many names on top of my head. But yeah. So I think I should definitely make a video at some point about this, which is I think we should try to find a distinction, because we call them RPGs in both cases. And in my opinion, it's a completely different experience. Okay, so my thoughts on it is that RPG for me means role-playing game where you're playing a role. Okay, and although you could argue that in any game you're technically playing a role, what I mean by playing a role is I mean that you have the freedom to pretty much play whatever you want, to do whatever you want, right? And that's why it basically fits into the games that fit into the category for me are, you know, Elder Scrolls series, Fallout, etc., which have that kind of freedom of, I don't even care about the main quests. I'm just going to do random quests that I find on my way, you know, save other people, and you can create your own adventure just by playing. And on the other hand, in, you know, JRPGs, it's never the case. Like, if you're doing side quests, it's mostly for the reward after it. That's it, right? It's because it's going to help you progress. It's going to help you get money that you might need for improving your equipment or getting new equipment. But that's basically it. There's no, like, side stories. Like, there is side story to it, but you know what I mean, right? You're not doing it because you're living a different adventure. You're doing it to help yourself progress through the main adventure. And you're playing pre-made characters with a pre-made story, pre-made, you know, interactions, whatever. Which obviously in all the other Scrolls, Fallout, Kingdom Come Deliverance, it's not really the case. In Kingdom Come Deliverance, it's slightly different, but it allows you to do whatever afterwards. So yeah, I think we should definitely try to find a distinction. So anyways, I'll have to... I'll stop with this because I have to make a video on the topic in and of itself. But anyways, yeah, thanks for watching. That was it. A little bit of a short video, I guess, since, well, I don't have too much to say about Kingdom Hearts since I haven't played it. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and see you next time.